you've been, right?
Oh, good.
Good.
Thank you.
Wonders of modern medicine.
I'd be dead if it wasn't for the wonders of modern medicine.
I know, what a.
Is that the chair? Look, like a midget, above the, you get a little person looking above the dashboard. Yeah. Yes. Sure. He's mean sometimes. He is. Phone calls go a long way. Oh, okay. Good. Okay. The meeting of the Township of Union Planning Board, Thursday, June 27, 2024, is called into session. Ms. Rose, would you please recite the sunshine laws?
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law, notice of this meeting stating the time and place was satisfied by the filing of an annual notice with the local source and the Star Ledger, newspapers of general circulation within the Township of Union, and posted on the bulletin board of the Township of Union Municipal Building.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cohan? Mr. East?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Ms. Espinoza?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Perkins?
Here.
Committeewoman Frazier?
Here.
Committeeman Bowser?
Here.
Mr. Frame?
Here.
Ms. Khan?
Here.
Chairman Johnson?
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. For old business, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 25th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. East?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Espinoza?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Committeewoman Frazier, I'm sorry. Mr. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Here.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. Okay. Now for roll call, please. Oh, you did the roll call already. I knew that. See, I knew that. Yeah. All right, I'd like to call up Watchung Developers LLC, Mr. Hale.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Hale,
Chair.
you and I discussed before the meeting, we do have a letter from the engineers recommending that we adjourn the matter to the July 25th, 2024 meeting. If we just look, the engineers believe we should allow the police and fire departments enough time to prepare the written reports. I think you have a copy of it.
Yes, they were kind enough to send me a copy of that letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your position on that, please?
Well, again, it's certainly within the board's prerogative to do that. I think I mentioned it to Phil and council. You know, we're not requesting adjournment. We're not extending the time period, but the board's still within their 120-day time period. So we'll see you. I did reach out to fire, waiting to hear back from fire and police to get their comments on the plan, and I'm sure we'll have it before the next meeting. So.
Okay, yeah, I'm inclined to grant the adjournment only because it's police and fire. We really have the public safety concern. We want to make sure that we're
Yep.
on the same page here.
As we discussed, certainly
Yeah.
within the board's prerogative.
All right, I'd like to have a motion that the application 2024-04 recommendation, Watchdog Developers, be adjourned to the next board meeting, July 25th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. East?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Espinoza?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Abstain?
Ms. Frazier? Yes. Committeeman Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hale.
My pleasure.
Ms. Russell, I understand, I'm sorry? Oh, we did Chick-fil-A, no? Do we do Chick-fil-A? No. Okay. We'll do pardon me for a second. There's a resolution for the Chick-fil-A resolution. I understand that we do approve the resolution. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Roll call.
Mr. East?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Espinoza?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Committeewoman Frazier?
Abstain?
Committeeman Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Steve. Okay. If any of you, are you here for anything else? We have a large audience here. Are you, okay, so you know we're not going to be hearing that today? And I don't want you to keep, if we don't have to, okay. All right, Ms. Russell, it's your turn.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Kristen Russell. I am here with Colliers Engineering and Design, and we were asked on this occasion to prepare a reexamination report for Union Township, and along with it are some zoning code amendments. They are, I believe, two separate items on your agenda, but I will go through them one following the next. It may take time for questions in between the two, but locally, recommendations or changes that we recommend, and if there is anything regarding redevelopment plans that we need to discuss. The scope of this particular reexamination, rather than a broad scope, which is how we usually deal with these on a 10-year increment, when it's done in shorter increments, there's usually specific reasons. And so the focus and the scope is more concentrated. For the purpose of the reexamination that we've done now, this includes modifications to the NC zoning district uses, modifications to the transit-oriented and commercial industrial district boundaries, and modifications to allow the potential for signage on municipal lots along Route 22. And I'll go into all of those as we go through this presentation. So one of the first things that I mentioned that the municipal land use law requires us to address is the objectives related to land development that were in effect at the time of the last master plan and how those have changed, why we're doing this now. I highlighted in the next few slides text that is important to this discussion. So I will concentrate on that text. There is a goal within the existing master plan to support desirable non-residential development. Beneath that goal, there is an objective to identify zoning ordinance improvements that can respond to changing economies and market demands. For the purposes of this reexamination, that objective remains with the modification to expand the CI zone and uses in the NC zone. Again, I'll get to that in more detail as we go along. There's also an objective to limit incompatible residential uses from locating in non-residential areas outside of downtown or neighborhood centers, which would generate adverse impacts to traffic, noise, or safety. Again, that objective remains, but to be modified to remove the residential uses from the NC zone and concentrate that mixed-use characteristics in the downtown transition and downtown core. There is also a goal to strengthen downtown centers by encouraging a mix of non-residential and residential uses that provide employment, retail opportunities, services, and entertainment. That still remains true, but it's modified to, instead of saying downtown centers, to really concentrate it in the downtown core and downtown transition, which mirrors what I mentioned in the prior comment. And lastly, there is an objective to promote mixed-use developments in the downtown and near the train station. Again, the gist of that remains, but is modified and clarified to refer to the downtown as being the downtown core and downtown transition and near the train station. So what are the changes in assumptions? We're refocusing residential mixed-use development, as I've been saying, to the downtown core and the downtown transition, rather than scattering it throughout the NC district as well. This effort will help us support, this change will help us support ongoing efforts to revitalize the downtown core and downtown transition, so we can have a more, like I said, a more focused effort on those areas and allow the other neighborhoods of Union to be more single use in character. So what are we recommending? Within the neighborhood core district, we are recommending, well, currently it allows a mix of residential housing types and numerous commercial uses. We are recommending that the zoning district regulations be revised to eliminate the residential uses and any corresponding bulk adjustments resulting from that. As it relates to signage, we are recommending that the township explore the opportunity to install signage on township-owned properties along Route 22 that, based on size and geometry, in other words, they're probably like really slim or funny shaped where you couldn't really even get a building on them, to have those, consider using them for township signage. This may require zoning and code amendments, but that is for a future analysis. We're just setting the stage now for that potential. Also, as it relates to the TOD and CI rezoning, these two zones are next to each other. You can see on the map distribution, doors distribution, and so forth. So in other words, the current zoning on the ground, this current zoning does not match what's happening on the ground. And in order for those parcels to continue operating as conforming uses and also look at the potential for cannabis uses, we recommend rezoning those as CI to match their adjacent parcels and continue operating as they are today in conformity. Before I move along to the zoning amendments, I'm happy to take questions to clarify what I've just described to you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Questions from the board?
Just one question, just to establish for the record, as you did mention use cannabis-related use for the CI zone. The CI zone permits cultivation and manufacturing, but it does not permit retail.
That's correct. I should have been more explicit about that, yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? You can continue.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the second portion of the presentation, which is the zoning amendments. The last zoning code that you had was adopted, or the last amendments that we talked about were in 2023. The new amendments that I'm bringing forward to you tonight are both in response to the reexamination that I just spoke to you about, and also in response to some kind of straggling requests that have just sort of been lingering, improvements to the code that have been requested, and I'm kind of bundling them all together for the purposes of efficiency. Specifically, we're going to talk about addressing the NC zoning, which I just presented to you. There will be the CITOD map amendment, which there's not much code text, there's not any code text to amend, that will be a map amendment. And then miscellaneous other amendments requested. This includes regulation of massage and bodywork services, regulation of body art tattoo businesses, prohibition of methadone clinics, and the prohibition of parking flatbed utility trailers. Some of these are really just administrative type changes, but for the sake of transparency, as it relates to tattoo parlors, I have included language to regulate it as a conditional use, limiting them to the corridor commercial zone on Route 22. There was some concern in Union about the potential of them going into your downtown area, and that was not desired. And so this language will allow their presence only along the Route 22 corridor. There's also a separation distance so that between body art establishments, aka tattoo parlors, they need to be 1,000 feet from one another. So you're not going to see a whole cluster of them in a single shopping center or anything like that. Methadone clinics, very simple. We wrote some language to prohibit them. State law does allow the prohibition of this use, and it was requested that that be included in the Union zoning code. The neighborhood core zone amendments, which is what we spoke about with the master plan reexamination. First and most administratively, the current NC zone is in the subsection of mixed-use zones, and as we are eliminating the mixed-use nature of the zone, we need to relocate that within the code to a commercial subsection. And correspondingly, I have eliminated the text allowing residential uses, and within the bulk standards for the zone, I have also eliminated the density requirement, because density only pairs with residential uses, so it is no longer relevant. So that will be changes within the code text and within that this board would be hearing. Nevertheless, there will be a new section in the code that is copy and pasted from state regulations. And therefore, I was able to put language in the zoning code that references to the other part of code that says you must comply with this, you must be licensed, you must be inspected, otherwise you are not a legitimate business. So that is how we are making sure that the massage and bodywork therapies that are provided are legitimate and are on the up and up.
Kristen,
Yes,
that ordinance was introduced this past Tuesday night.
thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that update. Utility trailers, this comes at the request of your zoning officer. There is current prohibition, one is currently prohibited from parking trailers on residential lots. The language in the code, however, I think says something like recreational trailers or something that refers to the towing of boats and the towing of bikes and campers and this sort of thing. And there was a loophole to be found, and we have closed that loophole by adding language that says in residential districts, the parking of trailers and flatbeds such as those used for moving or hauling of equipment and materials shall be prohibited. So that was just like I said, a loophole that we are closing to make life a little bit easier for your zoning officer. That is the extent of the amendments. They're scattered throughout the code, and I think address many of the requests that have come to me over several months in terms of tweaking things, fixing things, bringing things up to date. But I'm happy to provide clarification on any of them.
Questions from the board? Questions from the public? Please come up. Ma'am, right, yeah. Right. Yes, sir, it's right here. Just identify yourself and your address, please.
So, Giselle Yi, resident in the Larchmont State area. When you mentioned the massage parlors, you didn't clarify whether or not that was going to be limited within the Route 22 area?
No,
Or is that going to be pretty much anywhere they could put these?
it's anywhere. I mean, the fact of the matter is that although it is not in the code right now, any practitioner providing massage therapy services is subject to state law. And we're just codifying that now within our own code.
Are we not able to do then the same thing that we did for the tattoo parlors and be able to also keep them out of our residential area?
So massage parlors are not a use. Massage therapy can take place in all kinds of places. In a physical therapist's office, they take place in hospitals, they take place in salons and spas. And those uses, depending on the use that it is operating under, would inform where it can happen. So if it's happening in a medical office, any zone that allows a medical office can provide that. And I'm not sure that, I can't think off the top of my head what zones allow medical offices. Same goes for personal service establishments. If there is a beauty salon, for example, that is allowed in a variety of commercial zones. I think it's allowed in core commercial, neighborhood commercial, downtown core, and downtown transition.
No, understood. I just wanted to see if there was some leeway to be able to limit the location, but if you're saying there's not, I guess there's no
Well,
discussion on it.
If a residential zone already does not allow medical offices or personal services,
It'll fall in the same
Yes.
group. Understood, understood.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions from the public? Okay. Ms. Russell, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
All right, I'd like to hear a motion to refer master plan re-examination to the Township Committee.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second that.
roll call.
Mr. East?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Espinoza?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Committeewoman Frazier?
Yes.
Committeeman Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Russell.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Next, new business, 545 Green Lake Park improvements.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is David Minchello. I'm General Counsel to the Union County Improvement Authority. We're here this evening on what's commonly referred to as a courtesy review. We're here to advise the township of improvements focused on the development of a passive park at Green Lane Park. In that park, which is roughly a 5-acre park, there's going to be a trail loop, a walking trail. There are no structures being built other than some sports equipment, outdoor equipment. But to explain the project in more detail, I have with me this evening Mr. Matthew Zwingraff from CME Associates. He is the engineer on the county project, and he is here to provide an overview of the project for the planning board.
Thank
With your
you.
permission.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Zwingraff, will you please raise your right hand? Swear in the witness, please.
Do you swear to testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Please identify yourself for the record, please, sir.
My name is Matthew Zwingraff. I'm a professional engineer and project manager with CME Associates.
Okay, counsel, please proceed with
Thank
the
you.
questioning.
Mr. Zwingraff, you mentioned you're an engineer, is that correct? And are you the engineer specifically on the county project at Green Lane Park?
That would be correct.
Okay. And I understand that you have prepared some blow-ups this evening to aid you in the presentation of this project, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could, at this time, take us through the improvements at Green Lane Park.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll get it up on the screen.
I believe we do have handouts if we have some technical difficulties. Yeah. All right.
Different one? No, that's a completely different one, okay, thank you. I'm gonna get one from you. Hey, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is this acceptable at this location for you? Is it-
Yes, I
Okay.
would recommend that you mark it as an exhibit.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also recommend that since we have a hard copy, it might be appropriate for the public, so that it can be angled. so
Absolutely.
that they can see it. Maybe it's hard, but I think it would be polite. Thank you, because we do have our copy.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to mark this as Exhibit A.
So ordered.
Thank you. Mr. Swingraff, please feel free to explain the project this time. Thank you.
CME Associates is engaged by the Union County Improvement Authority to design park improvement projects at 545 Green Lane. Commonly identified project as Green Lane Park. It's located on block 301, lot 25.01. It's a 5-acre county-owned parcel located.
Mr. Swingraff, I'm sorry to stop you, but I believe your microphone is off, and I believe the...
Better? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Please continue.
Because it was on before, so it's going to die again.
Thank you. Just repeating what I said earlier, the project is located on Block 301, Lot 25.01, also known as 545 Green Lane. The park is located immediately to the south of the Kennedy Reservation, also a county-owned park. Just locating it in reference to some of the other improvements in the neighborhood, there is the Union Y directly to the south, I think as mentioned previously, there's a door distribution warehouse located immediately to the north, and on the opposite side of Green Lane, I believe is the Elizabethtown Gas offices. The site is currently zoned as open space recreation zone, so the proposed use is consistent with the township zoning. I brought with me today exhibit, I believe we've marked it
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A, which is a color site plan rendering of the proposed improvements to the site. Just going over briefly the existing condition of the site, it is a 5-acre vacant site, predominantly wooded. It's bisected by a tributary of the Elizabeth River, which terminates in a culvert on the south end of the site. The area of the site surrounding the stream, which you see on the exhibit as a darker green color, are predominantly wetlands. In total, about 60% of the property is actually encumbered by wetlands, so it's limited to a decent extent what can actually be developed on the site within the DEP's freshwater wetlands regulations. The western portion of the site, closer to Green Lane, is approximately 15 feet higher in elevation than the lower wetland portion of the site. Currently, that portion of the site is occupied by several rather large debris piles, old piles of construction debris, remnants of other just fill that have been dumped on the site over the past decades. Moving on to the proposed improvements on the site, the focus of this project was to develop a passive use for the site, identifying that given that such a, predominantly the site is encumbered by wetlands, so it's, relatively limited in what we can do on the site, and we thought that would make best use of the site to utilize it for more passive improvements. So what we're proposing is a approximately 2,200 foot long network of walking trails. As you can see on the exhibit marked in it's more of the brown color that makes a ring around the center of the site. That's proposed to be an 8 foot wide, slightly elevated timber boardwalk that's elevated above the wetlands, so it actually wouldn't result in any direct disturbance of those areas themselves. When I say elevated boardwalk, it's not going to be 5 or 6 feet off the ground. It's really only going to be a foot to, I believe, maybe 3 feet max off the ground, just to make sure we can comply with all ADA standards for slopes. Anywhere where the boardwalk is elevated more than 2 feet, we'll be providing guardrails and handrails just to protect the public, and any areas where the boardwalk is elevated between 0 and 2 feet, we'll still be providing a tow curb around the outside to make sure anybody that's utilizing the boardwalk with a wheelchair or while they're walking isn't going to inadvertently fall off the side of the boardwalk. Moving over to the eastern portion of the site, which is located adjacent to Green Lane, as I mentioned before, this is predominantly covered by woodlands, vegetation, and piles of construction debris. Some of these are 5 to 6 feet tall. You almost wouldn't notice that they're out there without actually going out there and walking on them and realizing that it's predominantly made up of chunks of concrete and asphalt millings. Directly on I guess that would be the southwest corner of the site adjacent to the Union Y property, there are the remnants of an old asphalt parking lot. We're proposing to generally use the same area as a parking lot for this park development. We will be reducing the size of it slightly. We'll be using the same curb cut, so we're not introducing any new curb cuts to the site. Also along the park's frontage on Green Lane, we're proposing to extend the sidewalk from the door distribution warehouse on the north down to the Union Y site directly to the south. Just focusing on that portion of the park for a second. So we will be removing all of those debris piles that are currently on site to level off the site. And that being said, we're still looking to maintain as much of the existing vegetation on the site as possible. We've gone out, we've marked more mature trees on the site, so we do intend to save those. And in addition, on the wetlands portion of the site, obviously, we're limited by DEP regulations as far as what we can remove, and obviously we don't want to remove anything more than we absolutely have to install the boardwalk. So you might notice looking at the plan, the boardwalk takes a couple of odd jogs and angle points in it, and that's specifically so that we can work around the existing trees that are on the site. The parking lot that we're proposing off Green Lane provides 15 parking spaces. 2 of these parking spaces will be ADA accessible, as well as 2 of the spaces will provide EV charging capabilities for cars. Moving slightly to the north of the parking lot on that area of the site, we're proposing a concrete walkway which loops up to a small covered pavilion on the north end of the site, which will be utilized as a observation point for people to sit. They can look out over the stream, over the park. Throughout the park, we'll also be incorporating various areas with interpretive signage, so we can include information about natural wildlife and the environment, the wetlands that are present on the site. Just trying to think if there's anything else that we would like to point out. So on that portion of the site, since we are clearing some of the berms that give it a little bit more elevation, we're looking to make this more of an immersive experience. So we're not just going to clear cut that portion of the park and make it a completely flat lawn area. We're proposing to build up some landscape berms and mounds to provide a little bit more of a sense of interest for people walking through the park, so they can experience just different landscapes, different plantings, native plantings that might be included. As far as plantings go, we're looking to keep the plantings all native materials. We're proposing shade gardens throughout some of the wetland areas of the site where the sun might not filter down all the way to the ground. We're also proposing pollinator gardens and wildflower seed mixes throughout the site to provide a host for pollinators and, provide some nice aesthetics for people walking through the park as well. Regarding stormwater, so I mentioned before, we are reducing the amount of impervious cover in the parking lot. That said, the scope of the project still does trigger a DEP. It's considered a major development under DEP stormwater standards. So accordingly, we do have to comply with those standards for stormwater control. So in order to comply with those, we're proposing a small bioretention basin directly to the south of the parking lot. It's in a triangular shape off to the bottom. This is a vegetated stormwater basin. So not only does it provide control of runoff, but it also provides a water quality enhancement for any contaminants that might be washing off of the parking lot. And additionally, we're also proposing a area of pervious pavement under the parking lot, so it'll help to filter and detain the stormwater that comes from the park and from the parking lot. In the parking lot, we're also proposing minimal security lights for the site at night, in addition to a emergency call box that would be located in the parking lot. That way, if anybody at the park doesn't have access to a cell phone, it might not be working, they'd still have direct access to first responders if needed. So, and then just other typical park amenities would be included: trash receptacles, pet waste receptacles, benches, picnic tables. I think I mentioned interpretive signage before, as well as just a small nature-themed playground in the center of the upland portion of the site. So,
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Questions from the committee?
I have a question. The town just let a contract to repave that portion of Green Lane. So my question is the apron leading into that parking lot going to change location?
So it'll be in the same general location. I would have to check the plan to see if it shifts, a few feet one way or the other, but if there's going to be proposed paving there, we can certainly look to keep that in the same location. That way we don't have to have any additional pavement repair work within the right-of-way.
Okay, and what about utilities? You bringing any water supply in to the park?
Yes, so as far as utilities, we'll have electric on site to power the lights, to power the EV charging stations, as well as just a small water service, which will provide water for an irrigation system, as well as just a water fountain on site.
Okay. What is the timing on the project? When do you anticipate to start work?
So currently, we're in the permitting phase with DEP. We hope to have those DEP permits in hand by the end of the summer at this point. We've been working with them and just responding to some minor comments that they have. After that, we intend to be out to bid sometime in the fall and hopefully awarded over the wintertime and starting construction spring of 2025.
Okay. My guess is that the road will have already been paved by the time you start work. So if there's anything that you could do now to avoid having to reopen the road I would suggest looking into it,
Okay.
We certainly will.
Certainly do that.
okay? Thank you.
Yes, I just have a question I didn't hear you say, and I'm assuming the small playground, what I will refer to as a playground, that will be for all abilities, children of all abilities?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
I have a question. How many parking spots is put in this plan? Because it seems to be a lot, and what are you going to cater if there's too many people in the park, this village and parking, where would they?
So we're providing 15 parking spaces on site. We did try to make that relevant to the township's parking ordinance, which requires, I believe, it's one space per 5,000 feet of open field space for a park. And I think that's more geared towards like active recreation facilities with ball fields or parks. But just to be safe, we went with that metric to make sure it would handle anticipated parking loads. We also do have a trail connection over to, I believe that's Cabot Avenue on the northeast corner of the site. So if necessary, there would be parking available, I assume, in the neighborhood if there wasn't parking available on Green Lane.
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the public? I have a question. Sure, come on up. Make yourself available over here, please.
You mentioned 2 EV stations.
Sir? You have to go on the mic. We do everything on the record here.
I'm sorry.
No problem. You just give us your name and your address, please.
My name's Tony Baratucci, 1044 Mount Vernon Road.
Mr. Beverly, it's a pleasure.
You mentioned 2 EV stations.
Yes.
What is the need of EV stations in a park?
So
I see EV stations as being in a gas station, in an apartment building, a place of residence.
So I believe it was in 2022, New Jersey passed a new ordinance requiring electric vehicle charging stations for residential and non-residential developments. As far as how that applies to parks, I don't believe that's specifically stated in the ordinance. But generally for any non-residential development, you're required to provide one parking space. I believe if you have a parking lot of up to 50 parking spaces, I believe it's one EV charging space. So we're providing that just in good faith with the ordinance and understanding that as time goes by, there might be more and more people with the need for EV charging and just to provide for the space.
If I was going to charge my car, I'd either charge it at home or at a gas station or somewhere that's provided, not at a park. And that's going to force me to go to the park. I'm going to sit there and charge my car even though I don't need to use the park.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like my thought process. So I just wanted to know. So, okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I saw another hand come on up, please, ma'am. Please, once again, please give us your name and your address, please.
So, just so Yi, Larchmont Estates resident. 3 questions, project engineer as well as you. For the DEP, are you assuming you're going to be backfilling the wetlands? What did you put in your permit? Like, are we putting cost into the project to do that?
So for the wetlands themselves, this trail falls under a GP, I believe it's a General Permit 17, which allows the construction of a trailer boardwalk throughout wetlands and wetlands transition areas.
Mm-hmm.
So with what we're doing, we're not actually, I believe with the exception of the Stone Dust Trail, there's really no fill in the existing wetlands, and the fill for the Stone Dust Trail is minimal. It's on the order of, probably just a couple cubic yards,
Okay.
if that. So we're looking to maintain the existing topography, existing elevations that are on site, and that's something the DEP really looks at.
Mhm.
And when they review our compliance statements, they always look for ways to make sure we're developing this with the least impact possible. So they're always pushing us to that point, which is part of the reason why we went with the boardwalk, which really spans over the wetlands. We are still limited to the footprint of the area, but in our view and DEP's view, that limits
Okay.
the amount of disturbance.
And then you mentioned the project will be starting in 2025. How long would you be going to completion? And while you're doing completion and you have cranes and backhoes and so forth, are you going to have Green Lane blocked for traffic?
At this point, we don't anticipate Green Lane would be blocked off to traffic. We do have the existing parking lot on site, which does allow for an area for staging, so we don't anticipate that any materials, equipment, vehicles would be stored in Green Lane or otherwise affect traffic, with the exception of maybe the crane coming onto the site and leaving the site, but that would be very limited.
And what was your completion date again?
I believe this is a one-year contract. So we would anticipate, over the course of 2025 into 2026, depending on when that notice to proceed was granted.
And what's your current estimated cost?
At this point, our cost estimate, I believe, is at $4 million for the project. And a lot of those costs are associated with removing those old debris piles from the site. It's a substantial amount of excavation and export that we have to take off the site, mostly on the area right adjacent to Green Lane.
Okay. And I guess this last question, I don't know who it goes to, but when we have the schools that don't have ACs working, how do we prioritize this to get the funds over that? I'm not sure who that goes to.
I don't think he's in a position to answer.
No, he's not. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure who it gets addressed to.
Well, this is a courtesy, this is just round one. This is a courtesy review. We're not even going to take a,
County project.
Okay.
yeah, it's a county project.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have just one remark for clarity. I understand the parking spaces that you have indicated with the EV charging stations, et cetera. Is it my understanding that the overflow, which it's a lovely park, I'm sure there will be extras, will have to cross Green Lane to get into the park?
So the parking lot that's shown on the far side of Green Lane, I believe that's the Elizabethtown Gas parking lot. So everything will be contained on,
So that the parking, the extent of the parking will be those 14 spaces?
yes,
That's correct.
the 15 spaces on site.
I don't know if there's any, this is a courtesy that looks like a lovely project, but that certainly seems very small.
So just be limited to these spaces.
There's no other way to access this, but to walk or take your vehicle. And then you must,
the other side of the park. Entrance on Capitol also.
Correct, yes. And I believe there's a small parking lot near Kennedy Reservation, near the back entrance to Kennedy Reservation, that might also be available, but
Any other questions from the board? Questions from the public? Come on, up. Good evening, ma'am. Please recite your name and your address, please, for the record.
Taishita Chapman, 1092 Mount Vernon Road. Just a quick question. I know that this is a county project, but what is the plan for maintenance and the upkeep of the property?
so maintenance would fall under the Union County Parks Department.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions from the public? Questions from the board? Council, would you like to sum up?
Well, just at this time, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to present the project. We are requesting a resolution acknowledging that we're here for the purposes of answering any questions, both from members of the board and from the public. And we look forward to continuing a dialogue with the engineering office and all applicable offices within the administration to bring this project to fruition. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the public, for your input. No new business. I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
well, I'd like to make a recommendation that we acknowledge the presentation that was just offered, and thank them for their time and energy in putting it together for us.
Okay.
Resolve
So ordered.
Yes, for resolution.
All right. Is that your,
That's my motion.
this your motion? Okay, second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. East?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Espinoza?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Committeewoman Frazier?
Yes.
Committeeman Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, once again, we're going to, no more new business. We're going to take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Second.
A second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. It's kind of crowded. Yeah.